Hurricane Dorian still has a few chapters to go, but enough has already been written in the history books to make it worth looking back on. So we're going to spend a few minutes dissecting Dorian. First, a couple key statistics. Its maximum sustained winds of 185 miles per hour tie it for second strongest in the Atlantic Basin since 1950, with Wilma in 2005 and Gilbert in 1988. The only faster winds were in Hurricane Allen in 1980. It is the strongest hurricane on record to make landfall in the Bahamas, that we know for certain. And its slow movement, moving only about 25 miles in a 24-hour period, also puts it in the record books, making it the slowest moving major hurricane in the Atlantic Basin over a 24-hour period since 1965, so over a period of at least 50 years. This infrared satellite image, this is about as good as you're going to get, folks, with the new GOES satellite images, shows the eye of Dorian slowing to a crawl over Grand Bahama Island. This is Grand Bahama, this is Abaco Island. And the island had some sort of a influence on the hurricane. The eye began to wobble and gyrate, and little mesovortices on the inner part of the eye wall. We saw this with Maria as it approached Puerto Rico a couple years ago. Eventually, and this is a 36-hour loop, what a nightmare for the Bahamas to have that monster on top of you, at times producing 185 mile per hour winds. Now, we don't have many direct measurements of those winds, but shout out to my colleague Steve Seaman for finding this data. This is from the western tip of Grand Bahama Island. This is a National Data Buoy Center weather station. The line I've drawn here is 50 miles per hour. Anytime the graph is above that black line, winds were gusting above 50 miles an hour. This is about a 48-hour period where winds gusting above 50 miles per hour were felt on the western part of Grand Bahama Island, and they did not even really get into the eye wall at all. Now, European Union has a satellite called Sentinel that allows us to see through the clouds. This is the eastern part of Grand Bahama Island prior to the arrival of Dorian. The orange here represents ocean, and the green is land. And this is what it looked like afterwards. Much of the eastern half of Grand Bahama Island simply inundated. The photos from the ground reminded me of the damage in Homestead, Florida, 1992 Hurricane Andrew, and even on Mexico Beach last year with Category 5 Hurricane Michael. Now, the forecasts, I think, were pretty good. This is as we go back to the National Hurricane Center's forecast last Friday. Here, they thought that the hurricane could get to Florida. They updated this within about 24 hours, and so this is the forecast from Saturday, showed that turn. Think about the confidence in weather forecasts these days. You have a radar image like this showing a Cat 5 hurricane over Grand Bahama Island, less than 200 miles from Palm Beach County, Florida, and there was no major panic. There were some evacuations, but it's amazing how we were able to pick up on that turn to the north and to the west. Much like Hurricane Matthew, the remaining path of Dorian will resemble Matthew's path beyond north of, say, South Florida. Very similar. There will be problems with storm surge, anywhere from 3 to as much as 8 feet of storm surge. These are the National Hurricane Center's storm surge warnings. And there will also be problems with heavy rainfall in excess of 10 inches, possibly parts of coastal North and South Carolina, unfortunately in places that got a lot of rain from Florence last year. We'll be back in a moment with more.